Hello, and a very warm welcome. It is a true pleasure to have you here in this quiet corner created for rest, and I thank you for choosing to spend your time in this gentle sanctuary. The story that follows is intended as a soft and peaceful companion, a quiet harmony to help your thoughts settle and to guide you toward a place of deep contentment and easy sleep. Should this tale bring you comfort, a simple like or a subscription is always so appreciated, and a kind comment is a lovely thing to find. Tonight, we will be visiting the workshop of a kindly watchmaker in the town of Stillwater Bridge. Prepare to be enchanted by the scent of old wood and lemon oil, the feel of perfectly crafted tools, and the sound of soft, muted chimes that sing the quiet song of a town's gentle heart. Here, a craftsman builds a delicate model of the heavens that tracks not time but feelings, and in its music, we may all find a moment of profound and restful stillness. Chapter 1. The Silent Workshop. There is a particular kind of quiet that lives in a watchmaker's workshop, a silence made of 1,000 tiny ticking sounds that merge into a single steady heartbeat. In the town of Stillwater Bridge, Finian's workshop was the very soul of this peaceful quiet. The air inside was always still and smelled wonderfully of old, respected things. The clean, citrus scent of lemon oil used for polishing wood, the sharp, pleasant tang of brass, and the dry, sweet perfume of sawdust from a recent carving. It was a place where time was not a thing to be raced against, but a gentle current to be observed with fondness and care. Finian sat at his workbench, a large, sturdy table of dark wood worn smooth by decades of patient work. The morning light, a soft, pearlescent gray, poured in through the wide north-facing window, illuminating the world within without casting any harsh shadows. It was a perfect light for his intricate work, gentle on the eyes and revealing of the smallest detail. It lit up the fine silvery dust motes that danced in a slow, endless ballet in the air, each one a tiny fleeting star in the quiet galaxy of the workshop. He held a pair of fine steel tweezers in his hand, their grip cool and familiar, their purpose to place a gear no bigger than a poppy seed into the heart of a waiting clock. He had been performing this delicate task for many hours, yet his movements were as unhurried as the drifting dust. Each tiny part was treated with a gentle reverence, its polished surface gleaming softly in the morning light. The soft ticking of the finished clocks on the walls around him was a comforting, rhythmic lullaby, a testament to the steady, ordered peace he created every day. Yet on this morning, a new thought, as small and as quiet as the gear in his tweezers, began to take root in his mind. He was a master of measuring the duration of a moment, but what of its quality? What of the deep, slow contentment of a sunny afternoon, or the quick, bright wonder of seeing the first star at twilight? He carefully placed the final gear into its housing, a soft, satisfying click echoing in the quiet room. He set down his tweezers, the metal making a gentle sound against the wood of the bench. His gaze drifted to the sunbeam, that long, golden road of light now slanting across the floor, and he watched the dust motes swirl and dance within it. They seemed like tiny planets, each following its own unknowable, graceful orbit. An idea began to form, a gentle and wonderful notion of a device that could map not the heavens above, but the quiet universe of feelings that flowed through his peaceful town. He imagined an orrery, one of those beautiful mechanical models of the solar system, but his would be different. Its spheres would not be cold, distant worlds, but warm, tangible representations of the simple, gentle emotions that made life in Stillwater Bridge so pleasant. One for the sturdy contentment of a well-baked loaf of bread, another for the quiet solitude of a walk by the river, and perhaps a tiny shimmering one for the shared wonder of a snowfall on a quiet evening. Each would have its own feel, its own weight, its own soft texture. The idea settled in his heart with the same gentle, perfect click as the gear he had just placed. It felt right. It felt true. It was a project not of frantic invention, but of quiet discovery. It would require all his skill, all his patience, and a new kind of listening, a listening with the heart. He imagined the device turning, not with the cold, unfeeling precision of a clock, but with a slow, organic grace, like a flower turning its face to the sun. He smiled, a soft, gentle expression that was mirrored in the warm gleam of the polished brass around him. He reached for a piece of soft, clean cloth and began to gently wipe down his tools. The familiar textures of the smooth wood and cool steel a comfort in his hands. The scent of the lemon oil from the cloth was bright and clean. This was the first step, the quiet preparation, the gentle clearing of the way for something new and beautiful to begin. The workshop, with its steady, ticking heartbeat and its dancing motes of light, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation, a silent, supportive partner in the wonderful work that was to come. Outside in the town square, the gentle murmur of the morning began, the soft calls of the baker and the distant, happy laughter of a child. Finian listened to these sounds, and for the first time he heard them not as noise, but as a kind of music. It was this music, the quiet, harmonious song of a peaceful life, that he would seek to capture in his delicate model of the heavens. The orrery would not just be a machine. It would be a poem, written in brass and wood and gentle chiming sound. Chapter 2. Gather in the Spheres. The work began not with gears and springs, but with slow, thoughtful walks in the quiet country that cradled the town of Stillwater Bridge. Finian understood that to build a map of feelings, he must gather materials that already knew what those feelings were. His usual trips to suppliers for brass sheets and fine steel wire were replaced with a more meditative kind of seeking, his senses open to the gentle language of the natural world. His soft leather boots made little sound on the earthy path that led down to the whispering river. For the sphere that would represent contentment, his search led him to a place where a great ancient willow had fallen in a long-ago storm. He ran his hand over the exposed heartwood at the center of the trunk. It was a beautiful pale golden color, and the grain swirled in slow, peaceful patterns. The wood felt wonderfully smooth and warm to the touch, as if it held the memory of every sunny afternoon it had ever known. When he leaned in close, it smelled faintly of honey and dry grass, a scent that spoke of deep, simple satisfaction. With great care, he carved a small, perfect sphere from this heartwood, its surface like satin beneath his fingers. His quest for a material to embody wonder took him on a different kind of journey. He visited the town's glassblower, a quiet woman with gentle hands and a calm spirit. He did not describe a color he wanted, but rather a feeling, the feeling of looking up at the sky just as the day surrendered to the night. She understood. Together they worked by the soft orange glow of her furnace, its heat a comforting, dry presence. She gathered the molten glass, a substance that flowed like thick honey, and with a slow, steady breath, she shaped it. The final sphere, once cooled, was a marvel. It was a deep, impossible blue, and held within its flawless, cool surface were tiny captured bubbles of air that glittered like 1,000 distant stars. Next, he sought a sphere for gentle solitude, that peaceful feeling of being alone without being lonely. He walked along the riverbank, the water making a soft, continuous shushing sound against the smooth pebbles of the shore. He found a piece of wood tumbled by the river for so many years that all its rough edges were gone. It was a pale silvery gray, its texture almost silky, and it felt surprisingly light in his palm, as if it had let go of all its weight and worry. It held the cool, clean scent of the river and the damp earth, a fragrance of quiet and clean thoughts. Each material he gathered was brought back to the workshop and placed in a soft, velvet-lined tray on his workbench. There was the warm, honey-scented heartwood, the cool, star-flecked stilled glass, the light, silky riverwood. He found a piece of dark, rich soil from the baker's herb garden for nurturing, and a sliver of fallen bird's nest, woven with incredible care for the feeling of safety. Each object was a quiet poem, a tiny piece of the world that held a pure, gentle feeling within its very substance. He spent many afternoons simply holding these objects, his eyes closed, feeling their unique textures and temperatures and breathing in their subtle scents. This was as much a part of the construction as the cutting of any gear. He was not just collecting things, he was attuning himself to them, listening to their quiet stories. He needed to understand the gentle resonance of each sphere so that he could build a mechanism that would allow them to sing their true song. The workshop became a sanctuary of these quiet feelings. The afternoon sun would slant through the window, its golden light falling across the tray of spheres, making the stilled glass glitter and the heartwood seem to glow from within. The air, already so full of the comforting sense of Finian's trade, was now layered with these new earthy fragrances of honeyed wood and clean river water. The process was slow as a tree growing or a river smoothing a stone, and in its languid pace, Finian found a deeper peace than any clock could ever measure. The gathering was a journey of quiet observation, a treasure hunt for feelings. He was not imposing a design upon the world, but rather gathering the beautiful, gentle pieces of it that were already there. As he looked at the collection of spheres, each one so different, each one so perfectly itself, he felt a profound sense of harmony. The orrery was already beginning to build itself, its emotional foundation laid not in metal, but in the heart of the quiet, living world around him. Chapter 3. The First Gentle Chime. The workshop in these days of assembly was bathed in a quiet, focused energy. Finian moved with a slow, deliberate grace, his entire being centered on the delicate task before him. He had cleared the central space on his workbench, and in the soft, warm glow of his brass desk lamp, the pieces of the orrery's heart began to come together. The lamplight created a pool of gentle, honey-colored light, making the polished brass of the gears and supports gleam with a soft, warm fire. The rest of the room fell into peaceful, comforting shadows. He worked first on the clockwork mechanism, the part of the device he understood best. Yet, this was different from any clock he had ever made. It needed to be nearly silent, its movement as smooth and as soundless as the turning of the earth. He oiled each tiny gear, not with a brush, but with the tip of a feather, the motion slow and meditative. The scent of the clean, light machine oil was sharp, but pleasant in the still air. The only sounds were the soft whisper of metal on metal as he fitted the pieces, and the gentle, even rhythm of his own breathing. The greatest challenge was crafting the resonant filaments. These were the threads that would connect the emotional spheres to the turning heart of the mechanism. They needed to be finer than a spider's silk, yet strong enough to hold the spheres, and they needed to vibrate with a perfect, clear tone. He worked for days with a spool of silvery alloy, drawing it through smaller and smaller openings in a special plate until the threads were so fine they were almost invisible, catching the lamplight like captured moonbeams. They felt cool and impossibly smooth to the touch. Finally, the day came to hang the first sphere. The central mechanism stood complete, a beautiful, intricate skeleton of pale, gleaming brass. The resonant filaments hung from the delicate arms, their silvery lines shimmering in the soft light. With hands that were perfectly steady, Finian took the warm, smooth sphere of heartwood, the one he had chosen for contentment. It felt solid and comforting in his palm, its honeyed scent a gentle presence in the air. He tied it carefully to the longest filament, his knot a tiny, perfect thing of practiced skill. He released the sphere, and it settled into place with a slow, graceful swing. For a moment, there was only silence, the profound quiet of a held breath. Then, the clockwork heart of the orrery, sensing the new weight, gave a soft, almost inaudible whir. The silvery filament vibrated, a shimmer of movement, too quick for the eye to follow. And then it happened. The filament gently touched the heartwood sphere, and a single perfect sound bloomed in the quiet workshop. It was not a loud sound. It was a low, resonant chime, as soft and clear as a single drop of water falling into a deep, still pool. The note hung in the air, seeming to expand outwards from the orrery in a gentle, palpable wave. It was a sound that you felt as much as you heard, a warm, resonant vibration that seemed to travel through the wooden floor, up through the soles of his feet, and settle directly in his chest. It was the sound of pure, uncomplicated peace. Finian stood utterly still, his eyes closed, listening. He felt a tension in his shoulders, a tightness he had not even been aware of, simply dissolve away. His breathing, which had been shallow with concentration, deepened into a slow, easy rhythm. A feeling of profound and gentle calm, the very feeling the heartwood was meant to represent, washed over him completely. The single beautiful note seemed to clean the very air, leaving behind nothing but a deep and abiding serenity. The chime faded slowly, its echo lingering for a long time before finally melting back into the workshop's gentle ticking silence. Finian opened his eyes. The heartwood sphere hung perfectly still, its warm golden surface seeming to glow with a soft inner satisfaction. He reached out a hesitant finger and gently touched its smooth surface. It felt wonderfully warm. The orrery was alive. It had spoken its first word, and that word was peace. Chapter 4. A Shared Harmony. The next morning, the air in the workshop was different. It was still filled with the familiar, comforting sense of wood and oil, but now it was also threaded through with a soft, continuous music. Finian had added more spheres to the orrery. The cool, star-flecked globe of wonder now hung alongside the warm heartwood, and the silky, pale riverwood of solitude turned in a slow, gentle orbit of its own. Their chimes blended together, a melody that was always changing, yet always harmonious. A quiet lullaby of simple, gentle feelings. As was her custom, Isla the baker arrived with a small loaf of bread for Finian's breakfast, wrapped in a clean, white cloth. The warm, yeasty scent of the fresh bread preceded her, a comforting aroma that always made Finian smile. She pushed open the workshop door, which chimed its own welcome with a small brass bell, and paused on the threshold. Her kind face, usually bright with a simple, happy energy, softened into an expression of quiet curiosity. "Finian," she said, her voice as warm as the loaf in her hands, "what is that beautiful sound?" Finian turned from his workbench with a gentle smile. "That," he said softly, "is the sound of a quiet morning." He beckoned her inside. Isla stepped into the workshop, her eyes finding the source of the music immediately. The orrery turned with a silent, graceful motion in the center of the room, the morning sun from the window glinting off its polished brass and making the silvery filaments shimmer. The spheres glowed with their own internal qualities. The stilled glass, a deep, peaceful blue. The heartwood, a warm, honeyed gold. Isla walked slowly toward it, her footsteps soft on the wooden floorboards. She stood before it, her head tilted, listening. The chimes were soft, a cascade of muted, gentle tones that seemed to wash over her. A look of deep, peaceful contentment settled on her features. "It feels," she said after a long moment, her voice barely a whisper, "like the feeling you get when you take the first perfect loaf out of the oven in the morning." She looked at Finian. "You put that feeling into a sound." I've been noticing something, she continued thoughtfully, her gaze still on the turning spheres. The whole town has felt lighter these past few days. The air feels clearer. People seem to be smiling more for no particular reason. She looked at the orrery, then back at Finian, a look of gentle understanding dawning in her eyes. They did not need to speak of magic or impossible things. The truth of it was right there, in the soft, harmonious music that filled the room. They stood there together for a long time, sharing a comfortable and profound silence. The only sounds were the soft, ever-changing chimes of the orrery and the distant, gentle murmur of the town waking up. It was a moment of simple, shared appreciation, a connection forged in the quiet music. Finian felt the sphere of contentment chime with a slightly warmer, deeper note, and he knew it was reflecting not just his own peace, but the shared calm that now filled the space between them. Isla eventually placed the warm loaf on his workbench, the cloth around it still fragrant. "It is a wonderful thing you've made, Finian," she said softly. "A truly wonderful thing." She did not ask how it worked or what it was for. She simply understood what it did. It made things feel better. It made the world a little softer, a little kinder, and that was more than enough. After she left, the workshop felt full of a new kind of warmth, the gentle echo of a shared, peaceful moment. Chapter 5. The Music of Stillness. In the weeks that followed, the Orrery of Muted Chimes became complete. Sphere by sphere, Finian added the quiet emotions that made up the gentle life of Stillwater Bridge. There was now a sphere of soft, woven moss for the feeling of safety, and one of dark, rich earth for nurturing. Each found its place in the slow, silent ballet, adding its own unique, gentle note to the ever-shifting symphony. The orrery was no longer just an object in the workshop. It had become the town's quiet, beating heart. Its music, a complex and beautiful lullaby of muted chimes, filled the workshop completely. The sound was so soft that it never intruded, but it was always there, a constant, gentle undercurrent of peace. It spilled out of the open door and into the town square, where it mingled with the scent of Isla's baking bread and the soft rustle of leaves in the trees. The townsfolk never spoke of it directly, but they felt it. It was in the lightness of their steps, the gentleness of their conversations, and the deep, restful quality of their sleep. Finian's work was done. He now spent his afternoons in a large, worn armchair he had pulled up near the orrery. The chair was incredibly comfortable, its fabric softened by years of use, and it smelled faintly of old books and chamomile tea. He would sit there for hours, a cup of his own warm, fragrant tea on a small table beside him, and he would simply listen. The soft light of the afternoon would slant through the window, illuminating the slow, graceful dance of the spheres and the shimmering, silvery lines of the filaments. He was listening to the music of stillness. He could hear the warm, steady chime of contentment as the town settled in for its midday meal. He could hear the bright, clear note of wonder when a flock of geese flew in a perfect formation across the blue sky. He could hear the low, peaceful hum of solitude as people found quiet moments for themselves in their gardens or by the river. It was all there. The entire gentle tapestry of their lives translated into the most beautiful and peaceful music he had ever heard. He felt the town's quiet emotions as if they were his own. The harmony of the orrery created a harmony in his own heart. The constant, gentle chimes were a reminder that he was part of something larger, a community connected not by grand events, but by a shared appreciation for the small, simple, beautiful moments. A deep, restorative calm, more profound than any he had ever known, settled into his very bones, a feeling of being perfectly and peacefully in his place. He closed his eyes, the warmth of the teacup a pleasant weight in his hands. The scent of the bergamot in the tea mingled with the constant, comforting fragrances of his workshop. The soft, complex music of the orrery washed over him, a gentle tide of pure tranquility. He felt no pride of creation, only a deep and humble gratitude for being able to listen. He had set out to capture the quality of a moment, and he had found instead the gentle, eternal music of a shared and peaceful world. The orrery turned, its spheres glowing softly in the fading light. Its muted chimes sang their lullaby of contentment, of wonder, of safety, and of peace. And Finian, in his comfortable chair, surrounded by the scents and sounds of his life's gentle work, felt his breathing slow, his thoughts quieten, and his spirit come to a perfect and complete rest. The music of stillness had filled him completely, and it was the sound of being home,